Here we are. It looks like we're live. Our friend Jason's in the house. This is not Tom's here. We're starting off strong. Last week we came out hot. This week we're talking about inaction or mistakes. What is more costly? No, this is not the smartest guys. How you doing today, Tom?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I think last week we came out hot, but it was raining. So we came out hot. We had a great conversation, and a little while into it, I realized that in my rush to get everything squared away on my end and deal with technology and those things, whenever you're splitting attention, sometimes things fall through the crack. And I forgot to do a little thing like hit go live. So we lost the first like half of the live stream last week. We had a great conversation, and it disappeared into the ether, never to be seen or heard from again. So hopefully
What's interesting about that is you were bragging early last week saying that you were having such a good day, things were going smooth for you, that you felt like you had extra time, everything was working out, and then we didn't push go live.
Yeah, is that SOB Murphy and his stupid law, right? Like always getting in the way. But yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for that guy Murphy, I hate Murphy. What a jerk.
Yeah, Murphy. Hey, I'm drinking this water right here. I will say I went to a networking event this morning, and I had an iced coffee from there, and I got almond milk in my iced coffee today rather than regular milk. Of course, I put all my sugars in the mocha in, and it was I felt good. So the almond milk might have been the right addition. I might be one of those guys now.
Just a nice big cup of diabetes to start the morning.
How dare you? Okay, inaction, burst mistakes. What are we talking about here? Jason, Julie, we're coming. Jackson, thank you for being here. Anybody watching on the live streams, TikToks, wherever you're at. Twitch, is it called Twitch, Tom? Is that what it's called, that one app? Twitch?
Yep, it's called Twitch, the live streaming app where it's mostly populated by like Gen Zers playing video games. We're probably Gen Alpha now. I don't even know. I don't know what generation it is. Who knows?
We're past the generations.
Yeah. I'm not even going to try to keep track. I'm too old for that. That's it. I'm going to embrace my advanced age and say I'm too old to know who's on what platform anymore. I can't keep track. But yeah, it's called Twitch.
Okay, got it. All right, inaction. Get ready, Jason. Get ready, Tom. Inaction or mistakes. What's more costly? I live in this world, through publishing, there's always things at the end of the day that, you tweak it and runs and things like that. Or you have authors that wrote something and they just aren't ready to publish it, or a project that I'm working on, whether it's a log line or how I pitch it to somebody, you're just not ready and you wait, and then maybe you're missing opportunities. I don't know. Tom, so let's get into it. Is there a clear answer? Is it project dependent? Where do we start?
I mean, I think for the sake of argument, for the sake of conversation, I'm going to speak in a little bit of generalities here, right? Because it's just hard to get, if you get too into the nitty gritty or into the details, you end up talking about individual circumstances rather than sort of broad concepts, right? So we're going to speak in generalities a little bit, but I think that almost without exception, inaction is more expensive than mistakes, or are more like not taking action is more expensive than making a mistake, right? I have to make sure we got things in the same tense. One's plural, one's not. Anyway, inaction is more expensive than making a mistake, I think, almost without exception. And that's because to quote our friend Bill Shakespeare, geez, I can't even say his name. To quote Bill Shakespeare, to err is human, right? And it is 100% relatable for you to make a mistake. If you make a mistake and you own that mistake, sort of like we just did when we started the show today, we talked about how we messed up last week. Actually, I messed up, really, because that's my job to hit the go live button on my end, and I didn't do it, right? So, I messed up last week. I messed up the stream. I made that mistake. I will own that mistake, and I'll move forward. And the reason why I'm transparent about that and I'm open about it and I talk about it freely is because I know that everybody listening to this, everybody watching this will listen to me and go, yeah, I've made a stupid mistake like that before, right? Like I've had Murphy's Law kind of rear its ugly head and throw a wrench in my works before too. But it didn't stop me from doing Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. I didn't turn around and go, that's it, I forgot to hit live. We might as well just stop now and go home for the day, right? Like I didn't pack up my toys and leave the sandbox, right? I decided to continue playing and to move forward rather than going backwards and or stopping, right? And inaction is just stopping, right? It's packing up your toys and going home. It's giving up. It's quitting. And quitting is always more costly than persevering, right? It is always more costly than pushing forward and trying new things and working to accomplish your goals. Taking even sometimes the most minute steps forward is more valuable, right? And translates to greater value than standing still ever could. So I absolutely believe that inaction is more expensive than making a mistake. And to further that, I would just say, look, we all make mistakes. And if you make a mistake, the best thing you can do is own that mistake and demonstrate how you've learned from it, right? I made 100% sure. And I even said to Dom right before we went on, I said, I am not going to forget to hit live this week to start the live stream. And guess what? We're live streaming, right? We got my new friend Chris Colt on LinkedIn already commenting and saying good morning, guys, right? So like we did it. We're live. I know we're live. People are watching. People are tuning in. Chris says quitting isn't in my vocabulary, right? So I agree with you, Chris. Inaction is always more expensive than mistakes. If you make a mistake, own your mistake, demonstrate how you've learned for it, move forward. People will love you for that. They will love you for talking about your mistakes, for owning your mistakes and showing how you move forward from them. So yeah, I think it's always more expensive. And I'll release.
Okay, yeah. Now we're gonna challenge you. Like if you give me a raw burger at a restaurant, I don't know that I love that. So, there, like you said earlier, it could be circumstance based. So, Jason, inaction or mistakes? What's more costly? What? When? Go on. Jason, I hear you.
Jason,
I
we
heard.
can't hear you. We see you're unmuted, but I can't hear you at
And
all.
he's got a hat on too. Julie doesn't have a hat on. One look, I'm looking at pictures, profile pictures. I see I have a hat on there. Tom has a hat on. Jason has a hat on. Julie doesn't have a hat on.
Is that better? Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
now you sound great. Go on.
Okay, so you're putting me in a quandary, and that is a mind. I can't say the certain word I want to come to, but let's just say, you look at the definition of a mistake: an action of judgment that is misguided or wrong. So ask yourself, were you going according to your assumptions, what you felt, what you believed, versus you ignored evidence that may have led you to a better outcome, or an action that you were wrong? You know, hey, I made a bad choice. I didn't know, but I made an action. It happened. Then you look at the verb tense of it. It's like you're being wrong about it. It's okay. So which is worse? Depends. Life-threatening situation. You want to put it that way? If it's, say, like you didn't put your business listed in a certain week and somebody else was getting so much more that that you're doing the same thing, you can't count checks you never got. You can't count on things that never came your way, that never existed. So I'm going to leave that question as my answer is you're putting it into a quandary, and can you move on? That's just it.
All right, Jason. I like the quandary answer. That's a good take on it. So, I would say it's also it really is project dependent. Is there a time where if you put something out too early or too late that you risk everything? Like you made such a big mistake with a client. You were rushing and you shared their credit card numbers. You were how haste makes waste. I don't, Julie, how do you go on? What's your thoughts on inactions or mistakes? Where do you go here?
Hey, Hat Club. No one gave me the invite to the hat.
Oh man, how terrible, Wes. And we didn't give you a proper intro either. Julie Loken from Mediacasters, and also founder of Creative Con. What do you got for us, Julie?
Well, I am one that probably pulls the trigger too quickly. I'm not an overthinker by any step of the imagination. I guess I would rather ask for forgiveness and permission and figure out as you go along. And that's a stepping stone for everything we learn in life, of course. The only mistakes you can make are with your words. So be cautious. I usually wait 24 hours to respond to something that gets me all riled up, just to make sure I don't make a mistake with my words. So thanks.
I'm going to spit this out. I've stuttered because that was a good take of the waiting 24 hours, taking the question a whole nother direction here of yes, rather than I sometimes get worked up. And if I waited, Tom, what say you? And then Jason's raising his hand. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's fine. Like being measured in a response or taking time to take a breath to evaluate your response or evaluate what you're going to say or give a chance for, tempers to settle or whatever, or emotions to settle. Totally fine with that. I don't see a problem with that at all. A delay is not inaction, right? Inaction is deciding not to do something, right? Like inaction is by definition a lack of action. A delay is not a lack of action. So if you're going to delay doing something so that you can, approach it with a more measured tone, you can be more reasoned in your handling of a situation, whatever the case may be, that's fine. Or to give you more time, like you were talking about, rushing to publish something, right? Like, if you need time, a little bit more time, if you need to delay the publication of something so that you have time to do the work you need to do to complete the editing process, to make sure that it's free of mistakes, that's fine, right? A delay is okay. A delay is not inaction. A delay is just that. It's a delay, right? It's a pause. It's a little bit of time, but it is not inaction because it's not definitionally a lack of action.
Okay, Tom. So what about, I get what you're saying. What about paralysis by analysis, where people, I'm thinking about this. Well, I'm going to make it a little better. Well, I'm going to talk to one more person. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a problem when it unnecessarily delays things, right? Or when it leads to inaction, right? But I don't think analysis or even a small delay is necessarily a problem, and it's definitely not inaction, right? Those two things are different. I'm talking about not doing something versus doing something, right? I'm not talking about taking your time to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward or doing the best you can in a given situation. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about not doing something, right? Versus doing something. That's the juxtaposition. That's the delineation and the framework that we're operating in here today. So yeah, I think, and in that context, in that framework, with that delineation in mind, inaction is more expensive than making a mistake, right? So yeah, so that's that's kind of where I land on it.
Got it. All right, Jason, you wanted to add something in? Husan, we're coming to you.
Yeah, I do. Okay, well, let's use Julie as an example, just what she said earlier. You guys are wearing hats. You guys have always worn hats. You never changed your picture ever, right? So is it an opportunity for her to wear a hat and or take a picture and take it? Of course it is. Is it going to hurt her? No. Is that her inaction? Would she feel better if she had worn a hat in her picture? So these are things that it's like, what do they say, that contrast and comparison are the killers of all dreams? I will add to that by saying that a Stoic will tell you that it's not about what happens in the outside world. It's what all you control and inside of you, and whatever comes out your mouth. That's the only things you can control. So just using that, people use those in passing, and they never realize that maybe you might be creating a condition that's unnecessary. And if you recognize that condition, you can actually take more action and maybe take more time to decide to do the things for the best outcomes. So yeah, I wanted to add that.
Cool. Appreciate you weighing in, Jason. Appreciate you being here as always, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, at the end of the day, we're talking about, like, I'm kind of thinking about this, and just maybe just to clarify a little bit more, the way I'm thinking about it, in the context I'm thinking about it in is, um, I'm thinking about, like, so say, for example, you record a video, right? Or this, this show, for example, right? Like, one of the things that we tend to do is we tend to release clips from this show, right? So the question is, often, we misspeak, or we say something wrong, or we get something wrong in this show. It happens all the time. Both Dom and I are very human, and we make mistakes, right? This is a live show, so it's blemishes and all. So then the question would be, is it better, right? And I'm using expensive, as a frame, but, like, is it better to share a clip where we make a mistake, or not share a clip where we make a mistake? And I would argue that it's better to share it, right? It's always better to do than it is to wait, right? And so yeah, so I think, that's kind of the framework that I'm operating in, what we're talking about here. But let's move on to Husan, who's joined us here. Husan, what do you think? We're talking about what's more expensive, inaction or making a mistake?
Good morning, good afternoon, Dominic, Tom. Glad to be back on the stage with you fine fellows. Hassan Thompson here, owner of Educator's House. I think inaction is the most expensive. I really appreciate Dominick's take on that tension, and I would even dare call it an internal tension between a strategic delay, which may have a purpose and may actually be very beneficial, versus levels of anxiety or the analysis paralysis that he described, which is, again, an internal tension. Whether you're being strategic or whether you're gripped by fear. And so that's something that I think we need to grapple within. I also find a distinction between that sort of paralysis versus stillness. There is nothing wrong with being still and waiting for someone else to make a move, or waiting for an insight or an inspiration to come. There's nothing wrong with that, but both of those describe levels of intention versus
Hey,
being stuck in
Husan,
fear.
tell me about this waiting for somebody else to make a move. How does that play in? Because I hear you, and I want you to explain that to us.
Well, I think about a reaction and response trigger. Sometimes, if you're not sure, let's, as an analogy, if we're playing basketball, I may be the point guard, but I'm going to wait until that center makes the cut to the basketball, and then that can inform my decision whether I drive or pass. And so in a complex dynamic, there may be a wise strategy to wait and respond to what's going on in the environment versus pushing your thumb on the lever and trying to make something happen. And so I think there is a wisdom in being able to be still and to respond versus being the first one on the dance floor, if that's fair to say. The last thing that I'll offer as it relates to the expense question, we only have one life to live. And so feeling, if there's an internal tension between inaction, feeling the fear and moving forward anyway is a measure of courage. And I think people applaud that, even if you make a mistake along the way. That demonstrating that willingness to carpe diem, to seize the day. I think people have a tendency to admire that. And whether you become famous or infamous because of it, I think both of those, as it relates to legacy, may be better than being forgotten. And I'll close.
Hassan, that was all great. Really appreciate you being here and sharing that. It made me think of one thing. I absolutely, I agree that I think sharing vulnerability, being authentic, really sort of being authentically who you are in a public way, in a public forum, is a show of strength, right? It's a sign of strength, and it's a sign of good leadership, I think. And people tend to be attracted to that. tend to be attracted to people showing strength through vulnerability, tend to be attracted to people showing strength through authenticity. And I think all of those things are incredibly important to do. And a great way to do them is to move forward, to push forward and make mistakes, and then own when you make mistakes. I mean, obviously do it in a measured way, do it in a reasonable way. I'm not saying, you should always just run out and be impetuous and do the first thing that pops into your head. That's silly. That's not at all what I'm implying, but I am suggesting that moving forward is always better than standing still. I appreciate that. And I think you brought up that great point. It made me think of it that, doing so, moving forward and owning when you make mistakes, being vulnerable is a great sign of strength. It is not a sign of weakness. So appreciate that. Appreciate all of you guys being here today. We got a whole bunch of people hanging out with us in the room, folks listening and watching all across the internet on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch, and TikTok, I believe. But yeah, so if you guys want to come up, raise your hand. We welcome everybody and anybody into the conversation. It's always open. Also, if you want to come up, if you can come up, if you got something to contribute, just raise your hand. We'll bring you up and give you a chance to speak. And with that said, I do believe the time is nigh for Tom's thumbs. So what do you got for me this week, Dom? How are you going to try to get me riled up?
Okay, so Tom's Thumbs segment we added. I just asked Tom a question from pop culture. Last week, I wanted to ask him about eggs, but I didn't want to. I wanted to talk about eggs because for some reason, eggs are making everybody mad. But I asked the question in a weird way, and it just was odd all around. So today, for Tom's Thumbs, I'm going to try to. Why would I try to rile you up, Tom? Would I ever do that to you? You're my friend. We've shared drinks together. We went to Permanis. I would never try to rile you up. So on Tom's Thumbs today, I want to ask you, what do you think about self-proclaimed experts that really in the field they're proclaiming they're an expert in don't have any, like somebody could say they're an expert in video and then you see weird, odd videos, or they could say they're an expert in social media, but they got 50 followers, but they're claiming and pricing and saying that they're experts. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, all right. So first of all, I just want to clarify for everyone here, everyone listening, you 100% would want and would revel in getting me riled up. So do not believe Dom's false narrative for a second. I sent a clip of that over to Snopes and it came out false. You 100% would try to get me riled up. So don't believe the hype. But yeah, all right. So expertise is a bit of a weird thing, right? It's something that a lot of people claim. A lot of people like to lay claim to, but definitionally, it's really hard to constrain. Right? It's hard to create a clear framework for exactly what expertise is across all fields. But here's how I look at it. A lot of people claim expertise in a lot of things, right? And I'm kind of, I myself am a little hesitant to even call myself an expert in particular things. I've been called an expert by other people, but it's not a moniker that I often put on myself. And maybe that's a little bit of my own hang up, but it's not a moniker that I often use for myself. Here's what I think. If you're going to claim expertise in a field, then you better be able to point to a demonstration of that expertise. I think if you're going to claim expertise in whatever field you want to claim expertise in, right? You want to claim expertise, in video content, you want to claim expertise in marketing, you want to claim expertise in communications, you want whatever it is, whatever legal expertise, whatever, right? Whatever it is, you better be able to point to a demonstration of that expertise. And if you cannot, stop calling yourself an expert, right? You are not an expert. If you cannot point to demonstrated expertise in the given field where you are claiming to be an expert, then pack up and go home, right? Like you're not an expert. You're lying to people. You're posing as an expert. You're claiming to be something you're not. And you're trying to, often people claim to be experts in an effort to get people to buy from them, right? To buy all kinds of things, to buy coaching from them, to buy courses from them, to buy all kinds of things from them. People claim to have expertise in given fields in order to sell you something. They claim to be health experts in order to get you to buy their really expensive, unregulated supplements that are likely less good for you than the food they're telling you not to buy, right? So I think 100%, if you're going to claim expertise, you better have the ability to point to a clear demonstration of that expertise. And if you can't, if you don't, then pack up and go home and stop calling yourself an expert. I don't want to hear it. So in terms of expertise, I would say if you've got a way to demonstrate it, thumbs up, great, call yourself an expert. And if you don't, hard thumbs down. I'll put you with the bro marketers and those kind of folks that often get my ire. And I will say, get out of here. I'm not listening to you or anything you have to say. And if anything, I'm going to go around telling everybody how you're full of it. You're not an expert. If you can't point to it, you're not an expert. That's it. That's all I got.
Tom, I enjoyed it. And that was the first time that you've ever had a thumbs up and a thumbs down. So first time for a thumbs up and a thumbs down. Well done. A well played dual thumbs.
Yeah, there you go. You get a thumbs up and a thumbs down depending on where you land, right?
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I can't give experts a thumbs down because there are experts that I think have really valuable insights who are genuinely experts in their fields. That have really great insights and knowledge to share and that I enjoy listening to and that I learn from. So I'm not going to give expertise or experts a thumbs down, but I will give people who claim to be experts on the internet and cannot demonstrate their expertise. I will give those people 2 thumbs down all day, every day.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good stuff. This is not the smartest guys in the room. That was Tom's thumbs. We're talking about inaction or mistakes. What's more costly? That was a little take on experts. Jason, you had your hand raised, and we're coming to you, Brian Swift. As Tom said, thank you, everybody, for being here. We appreciate it.
I'll save my point, but I prefer here to Brian. Let's give Brian, a swing at it.
All right, Brian comes out swinging. I can't wait to. Brian is my friend. I'm going to see him in the next couple of days in Chicago, so can't wait. What do you got, Brian?
I believe that inaction is more costly than mistakes for this reason. I don't believe that you'll learn anything from inaction. I once had a president of a company I worked at said, if you don't know the answer, do something, because in doing something, you will either find out what you're doing is right or wrong, which will lead you ultimately to finding out what you need to do right. So inaction doesn't lead you anywhere, right? It's like quitting. To me, inaction is almost like quitting. So I would much rather make a mistake. And in the amazing words of my mentor, John Maxwell, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, and a mistake is an opportunity to learn. So if you frame it in terms of, I'm either going to find out something right or I'm going to learn something, I would much rather see somebody make a mistake and learn from it than not do anything. Doing inaction to me is as close to quitting as you can get. I'm complete.
Right on, Brian. And you are somebody that always pushes people forward, even as a coach. You spend time with that work. Just take that step. So appreciate all you do, my friend. So stick around. All right, inaction versus mistakes. We got Vanessa here, Debbie, Dave. I'm on Dave's 500 episode of his podcast, Living the Next Chapter. Love it. Okay, Chris usually talks smack on Tom. He's his good friend. He's been nice to Tom today. Mimi, welcome. This is Who's in the Room. Madison has come aboard with Motivation Champ. She is doing some sales and marketing for us. So Madison is
Madison, I have
she's
to shout out. I've never seen her on here.
yeah, she's on here for the first time. So if anybody here, connect with her, and everybody in this room should. Hey, it's like what is it? The Brady Bunch, where somebody's beside you, up, down, left, right. Connect with them, check out their bios, see what they're doing, see what they're into, and who knows, it could be maybe you are all into something big. Okay, so Tom, inaction versus mistakes. What's more costly? Any experience where you went one way or another on this, where you went the opposite of what you usually do, where like let's say I would take action and then I'm like, shit, I wish the more I learn, to Julie's point of like, even I'm probably always taking an extra little bit of time to ponder, where maybe early on I went, yes, I'm in. I'm moving it forward in some way. And that's what you said earlier, Tom. Well, you're moving it forward, so it's not really an activity. So any times where you missed the boat on this?
Nothing specific is jumping to mind, to be perfectly honest. But I think, undoubtedly there are times in my life, I can't think of a specific example, but I would bet money that there have been times in my life where I have missed opportunities because I failed to act quickly enough, right? Or I failed to act, right? And so I missed an opportunity because of that failure to act. I think, I'll give you an example. Like, I don't have a clear example off the top of my head, but I know this situation has happened or did happen in the past, that there were times when I first started my business when I would get really, I get a project, I get really focused in on that project, and I wasn't good at sort of keeping up with past clients and contacts or whatever, and I would let things go, go silent for too long, right? And there were definitely times when I reached back out to somebody, months later, and they said, "Oh, I didn't know that you were still, I didn't know that you were still doing things, or I didn't know you were still around, or I thought you had gone back to TV or whatever, because I hadn't heard from you. So I called someone else for a project we just had," right? And so I missed opportunity because I didn't stay front of mind, because I didn't stay present for people, because I wasn't good about staying in touch, right, and being active in sort of networking and that kind of thing. So, for sure, 100%. I definitely have missed out on opportunities because of a lack of action. Absolutely. I don't have a specific like big example that really kind of fits that perfectly, but yeah, inaction definitely has cost me opportunities in business for sure. And I'm sure it's cost me opportunities in life too. Look, I'm happy. I'm very lucky. I have a great life. I have a good family, a healthy family. No complaints, right? None whatsoever. But yeah, I've definitely missed out on things because I didn't act sort of quickly or decisively enough, without question. That has absolutely happened to me. And I think it's one of those things that if you know that and recognize that and can own that, then it gives you that impetus to maybe move forward, not with more determination in the future, not necessarily sort of more rashly or without thinking things through, but knowing that you have to kind of keep moving forward. You cannot sit on your laurels and hope that things come to you, right? Because ultimately they probably won't. You'll be disappointed with the results from that kind of attitude, I think.
True that. Inaction, or like I would say, like for me now, I might use a lot more benchmarks and metrics to make a decision than I did when I was 21. Yeah, at 21, I'm like, whoa, I'm in. Let's start this business. Let's build this. And now I'm thinking, okay, well, what's this? What's the plan, or what's the blueprint to getting where I'm going? So this conversation is interesting conversation, because sure, we could jump on anything today. Well, how much thought did you give it? Is this the first time this idea ever popped in your head and you're driving to the bank emptying your ATM to start it. Well, I don't know that might be a little too much action. Slow it down a little bit and think about it for a day, process it, set the plan. So inaction, what is more costly? Inaction or mistakes, what's more costly? I saw a comment from where is it here? Okay, Husam, we're coming. It says inaction is more costly. Chris popped in, Chris Fazet. It says, don't tell me, show me. This was about the expert buy. He said, don't tell me, but show
All right,
me.
hold on. Pump the brakes. How did you just say Chris's last name?
Fraize. Frazzy. That's a Fraze. What do you
I think
want?
you said Fazet, and I don't know
No, I
how
didn't
you
say.
got there.
You
But
don't. No, I didn't.
his last name
Wait,
is
was that a
Phrase.
mistake or an inaction of you learning how to pronounce it?
Was Tom
his-
not listening to me? What do you
Yeah,
think?
I don't know. I couldn't hear you because I got interrupted, but I'm saying his name is Phrase, Chris Phrase.
Okay, I think Chris Phrase. Okay, that's what I think he said. All right, Husan, what say you on the subject? Go on.
You know what I appreciate about your last share, Dominic, about being young and perhaps a little more impulsive than wise, is I consider that the tuition of expertise. I think oftentimes we have to go through these mistakes in order to get to a certain level of that deep understanding even to ask for the blueprint, let alone to know what belongs inside of it. And I've been to my fair share of marketing rooms where they try to pressure sell you from the stage. And I think in those spaces, sometimes inaction, even though it may or may not be intentional, is really a good thing. But if we do make that mistake and buy that coaching course that really yielded us very little results, on the back end, as someone else mentioned, there's still the opportunity to learn from those mistakes in order to be wiser in our further along in our journey. And so even though it may cost us in the short term, I think in the long term, the journey of making mistakes and failing forward ultimately is still going to be a good thing. Thank you. I yield back.
Well said, man. I appreciate it, and I always appreciate support. See, Husan, unlike Tom, you are validating what I am saying, not questioning my pronunciation of somebody's name.
Well, I think no, I agree with Husan. I think what came to mind for me when you were talking, Dom, was just the idea that, like, you know, with age comes like, I think, a healthy level of pragmatism, right? Where, you know, because of your lived experience, you're able to look more critically, analytically, and be a little bit more realistic about the outcomes from the actions you take. At least I think I've found that true for myself. Be a little bit more realistic about the outcomes, and a little bit less sort of pie in the sky. You can still be optimistic and hopeful. And I try to be every day, but I'm also a little bit pragmatic, and try to be honest about where I think things will go, right? Rather than just sort of latching on to you know, that sort of pie in the sky thinking that you know, like you said, I mean, you know, it's funny because, like, the name of my company, like the name of Talex Media, started that way, right? It was a buddy of mine and I in our 20s who had a crazy idea for a business. We were going to start the first internet broadcasting network, right? Or broadcast company. That was the idea that we had, right? We were going to start the first internet broadcast company, and we were going to call it Talex Media. And we came up with that idea about a year before Hulu launched. And then Hulu launched, and we were like, oh, all right, well, I guess we're not going to do that. Because also, we came up with a name, but we never actually did anything about the business. We didn't know the first, like, where to even start with it, right? And we didn't really try. We just had this idea, and we were like, yeah, we have, you just got to have a great idea, right? It's like, no, you got to have a great idea, and then you got to actually do something about it, right? Which we did not, and hence we don't own the internet's first broadcasting company. You know, say la vie, right? But yeah, you know, nowadays, if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, I want to do this," I'd be like, "Okay, then let's think about the steps you need to take to start making that into a reality, which is a more pragmatic approach. Not necessarily less optimistic, but definitely more pragmatic, more reasoned, right? So not inaction, just reasoned action. So I agree. I agree there. And, one of these days you'll learn how to pronounce people's names, and then I won't have to give you grief about that too. I love the look on your face when I threw that in there. That was hilarious and 100% worth it.
What hate? What hate? Hey, I want to say on this this thought here early on in my 20s, like when I opened my first restaurant. I opened the restaurant. I thought I was going to be the next chain. I thought I was going to be the next Fridays. I was going to open 30 stores. After a year, I was looking at a second location. My whole planning was nothing could go wrong. It was only going to work. Scale. And never thought of, well, maybe this happens. And my worst case was, I'd be like, well, worst case, only 50 people come in today. Well, worst case, and then I got in the business and realized worst case is it snows and the roads go under construction and nobody comes, right? So now looking back at any business, if I'm in the publishing business, I know me and Julie know people. We have people in this room that have sold millions and millions of books. I know people that have sold companies for hundreds of millions of dollars. Know them personally, they're friends. That doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. It can happen, but we should also look at the other side of this too. And do I have the infrastructure to take that? And how long can I last if nobody walks into the restaurant? If I quit my job and nobody buys from me, nobody gets my coaching service, how long can I survive? And so I really think that nowadays we have to I'm not 21 anymore. Now we have to look at both sides. The more we can look at both sides, the better off we are. Jason, you're slapping me 5. I always think this thing the hand raise looks like a high 5. So Jason, did you want to add something there? Yo, Eric, what's up? I see you going.
The restaurant example is a perfect example. It's not like you didn't have the wrong thing of thinking, but what you didn't do was the mistake is, what do I do when mistakes happen? When you're a restaurateur, you work in a restaurant and you don't get clients in the door, you don't get people spending money. Is that really your fault? That's not necessarily so easily scalable. However, it's like when you ask the question as a restaurateur or someone who works in the business, as it happens, I know mistakes are going to happen, but it's how I bounce from this to make more money. I worked 15 years in the restaurant business and I made costly mistakes, right? It cost me so much by maybe I said something the wrong way, or I didn't sauce up whatever I was selling, whether a drink or a food. Was that really a mistake? It could have been. It could have very much been, but I learned through experience and maturity. I think that's the thing that where expertise, when Tom was talking about it earlier, and there are so many people out there, whether it's on any platform, claiming they're an expert, but it's like, really, do you really want the experience? Do you want the maturity? How do you want, what comes so important with an expert? Because I've been in court where an expert was, let's just say, unqualified to the matter, right? And it wasn't that they didn't deserve their accolades, doctor with PhD and whatever. It didn't mean that they didn't deserve that in their discipline. But when it came to the particular problem in the science, they got it wrong. But are they still an expert? Yes, they're an expert. I'm not going to take that away. It's whether it actually applies. And could that have cost, say, like my client or anybody else's client more money? Yeah, it definitely can. So when we look at cost effectiveness, is like, when I make the decision, am I making it with the best sense of maturity that I'm trusting you to be able to help me execute on something I don't know how to do? So when we look at cost effectiveness, I'm not necessarily looking at the expert. I'm looking at what's the familiarity of the particular issue I have. Is there a maturity or not, or an eagerness and an anxiousness just to sell it to me? So I think that's I just was, hold on to that, since Tom was talking about the expertise. So sometimes even our own eagerness, quick to judge, could actually cost us even more.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate you sharing that. Even going the call back to Tom's thumbs. Appreciate it. Well thought out, and always value hearing your opinion here. So I think it's time for show and tell. Dom, are you ready with to show us and tell us about something today? You are muted.
What a terrible entrance. So we were talking about messing things up. We've done show and tell for 2 years, and I can't start on turn the mic on. Okay, show and tell is simple today. Sometimes you get smacked in the head, and then you get smacked if you get smacked in the head a couple times, like if I make a mistake, and then I make the same mistake, and then I make the same mistake, eventually, is it on me? So today I'm going to show you something so simple that it was a mistake I thought I made. And you could say, well, it wasn't a mistake, but it happened multiple times. So I think I should make the adjustment. So a few years back, I decided it would be so cool to have a completely digital business card. I'm like, oh, digital, I got all my information here. Just watch this and I'll put it right in your phone. So I'm at these networking events. I'm like, here, hold me your phone. Stuff going into their phone. It's a process. Not everybody wanted to hand me phone. Not everybody wanted me to give me their phone number. So, okay. So then, but I was still doing it. I was like, oh, it's easy. I don't have to carry it. I don't have to buy these things. So I went to 2 networking events recently. And at both networking events, they collected cards and shared them with everybody. They shared them with everybody in the room. So one time there's like 50 people sitting around the table, and I was invited to this networking event. It was my first time there, and I couldn't take my phone and go like this to every person. So 50 people that could have had my business card that day, whether they wanted it or not, I didn't have it. So I'm like, that was slap one. Other day, I went to speak on something at a different breakfast club in the morning. There was about 10 people there. They collected cards and passed them all around. Guess who didn't have a card again? That was number 2. So I got the second time it was on me. So now this little thing is my new Motivation Champs business card. And if you want to get fancy, there's a QR code on the back with all that stuff that I was bumping to phones before. But a simple, basic, I know it's out of focus, Tom, but as simple as you could be, business card, so I don't get smacked. Time number 3. So here it is. That's what I got for you. Simple, back to basics. They've worked for hundreds of years. I'm going with it. There you go.
I like it. I like the I like the sort of hybrid nature of it. I'd like to think, I don't know for sure, but I'd like to think that maybe I in some way partially inspired the addition of the QR code. I don't know where you got the QR code from. So like here's my beef with like the virtual business cards, right? And like the tap here cards. My beef with those is that by and large, it's a multi-step process, right? So you tap and then it takes you to a website and then you have to put in information and then that gives you a file that you download to your phone and then you have to save it, right? And so there's like 4 steps in the process. And every one of those steps is an opportunity for the person who you're trying to give your information to, or trying to get your information, or trying to get information from, for them to say, you know what? No, thanks. Right. Every step is an opportunity for them to say, changed my mind. Thanks, but no thanks. Right. And so I've done something similar. Right. So like I have, this is my business card. Right. You can tell from the logo. We'll get it to focus. Hang on. Where is it? There it is. Right. You can tell from the logo. And then if I flip it around, right, there's my QR code. Right. And the difference is with the way I did my QR code is I didn't do it through a third-party service. I created the QR code in Adobe InDesign, right? I used a piece of software that I already had to create the QR code. And so when someone scans the QR code on my business card, it literally just opens the contact file and all they have to do is hit save contact. And I'm in their phone. Done. Right. And then if they lose the card, they haven't lost my contact information. It also means that they can easily just pass my card on to somebody else if they need to, because they already have my contact information saved in their phone. So I am a fan of the card, of handing out the cards. The one thing I would say is if you're going to have business cards and you're going to go to networking events, do not be the person that walks around just handing cards out to people. Right. Like I sort of have a little bit of a rule that I try to follow when it comes to networking and when it comes to handing out business cards. And that is that I do not give my business card to people unless they ask for it. Right. And sometimes every once in a while, I will violate that rule and I will ask them if they would like my information. And if they say yes, I will give them my card. Right. But I never give my card to somebody without them expressly giving me permission to do so. So either asking for it or saying, yes, they would like it if I ask them if they want it, right? Never walk up to somebody and just hand out your business card. It's a great way to waste money on business cards because no one's ever going to call you if you do that. But yeah, anyway, I love the show and tell. Obviously I have thoughts on business cards, but I appreciate this sort of that hybrid approach of like the traditional for folks that want something to hold in their hand, but also the digital, right? For folks that want to scan it and then not worry about losing it. So I appreciate it. I like it, Dom. Good show and tell this week.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm trying. Okay. Inaction versus mistakes. We're going to go around this room real quick. Brian, Julie, Jason, if anybody wanted to come up and give a final tip on inaction or mistakes, like, okay, take the leap, whatever. So Swifty, we'll start with you, the king of action Jackson. Go on, Brian.
Well, like they say, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So start taking shots. You know, the worst that happens is it doesn't work out and you move on from there and you learn. So just keep moving forward. Thank you much. God bless.
Right on, Swifty. And all your eggs aren't in one basket. You just keep shooting, right?
Absolutely. You've got to, and you got to make sure that your eggs aren't in all in one basket. I mean, that is a deliberate move and something you do deliberately. So being present, making sure that you're taking shots in a variety of directions is even more key than just taking a shot. So I'm complete.
There we go. Julie Loken, who is never afraid to go for it. What do you got, Julie? You got a tip for us? I know she's here. Come on, Julie. Okay, we'll come back to Julie. Jason, what do you got, man? You come out hot sometimes, so I don't think you're afraid to go for it. What do you got?
I'm always willing to go for it. I'm going to use a line from somebody else. You know, you can't collect checks for work you never did. You know, and that's it. There's so many times that this question is so important and proper to people to ask themselves, from the New Year's resolution of I'm going to get better with my health to I'm going to learn about financial securities and literacy so that I can know how to save and invest, you know. So it costs more when you just don't take an action when you can.
Appreciate you, buddy. I knew it. All right, Tom, I got nothing more to say. It's that time of day where I got nothing, man. I got nothing. Sometimes I text Tom and I say, come on, man, carry me today. Maybe my caffeine ran out from my breakfast club this morning. So inaction or mistakes. Tom, can you give us a wrap up?
Absolutely. Is it the caffeine wearing off, or do you think you're crashing from the sugar? You got a little sugar crash going on from like.
I only put 2 packets of the raw sugar plus the mocha in there, so I don't know.
All right, so but then also was the almond milk sweetened?
I don't know.
Hence why I called it diabetes in a cup. But anyway, hey, look, you do you. If you wanna have coffee flavored syrup for breakfast, like that's all you. Personally, I like coffee, so I'll just drink coffee with a little bit of milk. But anyway, to answer your question, Dom, yes, I can provide a wrap up. And I think, we've talked a lot about inaction being more expensive than making a mistake. And I think there's a couple of examples of that from business that spring to mind that I wanted to share real quickly with everybody as we wrap up the room today. All of us here probably remember, I think all of us in this room are, with the exception of maybe Madison, who just started working with you. I don't know how old she is exactly, but I'm guessing she's significantly younger than us. Most of us remember going to Blockbuster, right? Or going to the video store when we were younger, renting videos. I mean, I remember renting, for years when I was a kid, it wasn't DVDs, it was VHS tapes we were renting, right? Going to the video store, growing up. So we all remember going to Blockbuster or going to your neighborhood video store, which ultimately a lot of them became Blockbusters over time, right? And here's an example of Blockbuster, which I think there is one remaining in the world. I think there's one remaining Blockbuster in the world. Otherwise, that company has shut down. They declared bankruptcy, corporate bankruptcy, a while back. And I think there's one remaining store left. But in 2000, so 25 years ago, in 2000, Blockbuster had the opportunity. The deal was on the table. It was a possibility for them to just say yes. Blockbuster had the chance to purchase Netflix for $50 million, right? And of course, with the benefit of hindsight, we look back at that and go, oh wow, that was a bargain, right? Like that was the steal of the century at the time. I forget what Netflix's market cap is, but I'm pretty sure it's in the hundreds of billions now, right? So they had the opportunity to buy a company which ultimately grew to be worth hundreds of billions of dollars for $50 million back in 2000. And that is a number that Blockbuster could have managed, right? That is a number that was realistic for them to spend to acquire Netflix. They could have done it, and they chose not to. They decided not to take action. And now, as I said before, there is one Blockbuster, one left. Of the thousands of stores they had globally, there's one left, right? Another good example is BlackBerry. For those of us that are, in our mid 40s or older, we probably had Blackberries at some point. I just looked this up. In 2007, BlackBerry controlled half of the U.S. cell phone market, right? 50% of the phones sold in the U.S. in 2007 were BlackBerries. It's a huge market share in any industry, especially when, there were a bunch of other players in the market at the time, but they controlled half of it. But because they didn't adapt to emerging smartphone technology, when the iPhone was launched, BlackBerry didn't adapt. They said, no, people aren't going to go for this whole touchscreen thing. They're not going to want to type on a virtual keyboard on the screen. They're going to want the physical keyboard. We got this, right? We're good. Because they were late to try to adapt to it. In 5 years, between 2007 and 2012, they went from 50% or half of the cell phone market to 5% of the cell phone market. They lost 45% of their market share in 5 years, right? 9% market share a year if it was a steady decline, right? That's astounding. It's astounding how much that inaction cost them. And then lastly, I will give you this example. This is one of my favorite examples for sort of not being adaptable, not taking action, and not being willing to adjust or change or evolve your brand or business with the times. And that's Kodak. Everybody knows Kodak, right? Kodak was a company that was founded in Rochester, New York. It was the largest producer of film in the world, also a huge camera manufacturer. They made everything film and camera related, right? Huge company, huge employer. They invented the digital camera. They created the technology that led to the digital camera. But they decided not to step into manufacturing digital cameras. And Kodak is now a shell of the company they once were. It is a fraction of its size, of the size that it once was, and it's because they chose not to manufacture digital cameras. They chose inaction over pushing forward, maybe making some mistakes, but ultimately being able to retain their market share and or grow into the new industry that was digital photography. So those are just 3 examples from business, like off the top of my head, really quickly in this impromptu wrap up that I could think of. I bet you I could think of a ton more, but inaction with these cases has cost these companies billions of dollars, right? Far more than a mistake would have cost them had they chosen to just move forward with buying Netflix, right? With adapting to the smartphone market, with launching a smartphone, and with manufacturing digital cameras. So I will leave everybody with that. Inaction is almost without fail more expensive than making a mistake. So move forward, push forward. When you make a mistake, because you will, own that mistake, admit to that mistake publicly, and work to correct it publicly. People will love you for it. That's all I got for this week. Thank you all for being here. As always, we appreciate you. I appreciate you. Dom appreciates you. Dom, have fun this weekend at Creative Con in Chicago. I hope it goes fantastically for you and everybody involved. Wish you all the best. If you guys haven't gotten tickets and you're in the Chicagoland area, make sure you check out Creative Con and get tickets for that event. It is coming up this weekend. Check it out at the Intercontinental Hotel in Chicago. Until next Wednesday, I am Tom for Dom. This is Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. I almost said the wrong name, as if you didn't believe I wasn't the smartest guy in the room. There you go. There's your evidence. But for Dom, I'm Tom. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. We will see you next Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, have a great week. Have a great weekend. Have fun at Creative Con. We love you. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.